Shalawam. This is Adasabat Saiwan returning with the book of Revelation, and this is still the prelude to chapter 21, but this is the final part, part 2, in this study, and this part is called The Restoration of Men, Women, and the Gentiles Forever. Now, this may be a tough study for some people to accept and receive because of where they are, either in their where they are in their congregation because of the teachings of their congregation, or where they are in their own lives. All right? It's not for everyone, so I'm giving you fair warning. But if you want to know the truth does set us free. And whom the Son has set free is free indeed. It's not what he said. Okay. Let us consider more about how life will be in the kingdom after we are regathered and afterwards. So in part 1, we start to look at our own physical transformations and even some of the roles that we'll be playing in the kingdom. Now we're going to go a little deeper than that in this study, because now we want to see the transformation, the restoration of men and women, and that will also affect their roles in the kingdom. All right? We will continue to look at the scriptures and the Apocrypha to glean the information that will help us in understanding some details concerning how our lives will be utterly transformed like nothing we have ever experienced before. What we will look at now will be the roles of men and women in the kingdom as compared to men and women of today. We know that when Adam and Hawa were in the garden, she was his helpmeet. We're going to look at that again. She was his support, and he did not lord over her. Yes, he was the leader, the head, but she was also his helpmeet, his partner. And both of them together ministered in the Garden of Eden unto Allah. All right. Sin entered into the picture, and even though Adam and Hawa, they still maintained themselves as they were in the garden somewhat, because he still didn't lord over her. But somehow throughout the ages, there became a great divide between men and women. And we're going to see why that happened. Where now women have been lowered and men raised up in their status. And people will say that this is obvious in the workforce, even the salaries that are given to men versus women, all these different things. All right. Because of sin, there's now an imbalance. When Adam and Hawa were in the garden before they sinned, there was a balance between men and women and their roles. And now we're living at a time where the imbalance is becoming more and more obvious. And what also we're seeing today is how the status of women are being pushed upward and the status of men being pushed downward. And we're seeing certain groups causing this to happen. We call them the Rainbow Coalition, whatever you want to call them. The alphabet people, whatever you want to call them, right? The ones that like to invert themselves, and those people. And what they're doing, and they're also being used, by the way, to help push the status of women up and push the status of men down. Again, still in an imbalance. It's still an imbalance. And we will never be able to achieve that nice balance, that delicate balance between men and women that like Adam and Hawa had when they were in the Garden of Eden. Can't experience that unless Allah steps into the picture. All right. So that's where this lesson is heading towards, restoring the delicate balance between men and women. How? By first restoring men and restoring women. All right. Okay. It will become more clear as it will become clearer as we continue on. Let's read this next line here. This is very important to note and to understand, as many people, both men and women of our brethren, have very drastic views of roles and purposes of the genders. This is not in any way to usurp the authority of men given to them by Allah Hayam and to raise up the status of women instead. No, not at all. This is to view men and women through the eyes of Allah Hayam, through His Rawach, His Spirit, so that we can quit these gender wars once and for all. We need to regain the delicate balance that was once experienced between the first man and woman when they were in the Garden of Eden, speaking of Adam and Hawa. We know that due to the transgression of Adam and Hawa, we have since been out of balance emotionally and spiritually. Because of our sin nature, we're tugged in extreme directions concerning our roles in ministry for Allah Hayam, even our roles as men and women, husbands and wives, fathers and mothers. These extreme positions have led many astray from the truth. But Allah Hayam will restore His order amongst us, starting from now and completed when we are regathered. I know when we look, okay, let's look at how the roles of men and women have been changing throughout the ages. And we're not just looking at our people, but we're looking at generally men and women. Because there was a time where men were considered the breadwinners. They were the ones who went out to do the work, to bring back the money, to support his family. The women, they stayed home. Of course, they have their children. They took care of the home. They took care of the children, of course. And they took care of their husbands. Somehow, over a period of time, a movement called the feminist movement rose up and said, no, 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 we don't want to be barefoot and pregnant anymore. No, we want to be equal to men. How is it that men are making more money than us? Well, because they're bringing home the money to you. They can't have it both ways. Can't have it both ways. You see, this is deception. This is the evil that came into the world, even from the very beginning, that constantly transformed the minds and the hearts of people to make them dissatisfied in their roles. When you look at a man, his strength is physical. Why? Because he's the one going out there and he's laboring. He's working by the sweat of his brow. The women, although they may not be physically strong like a man, they also have another kind of strength that allows them to bring forth children with great pain. And the two together become a unit that is somewhat balanced. Because she's not trying to take over his role and he's not trying to take over her role. He understands that she is the mother, the wife, And she understands that he is the husband, the head of the household. That balance there, that is very delicate based on the mental health of a person, the emotional health of a person. Because if you're feeling insecure about yourself and you enter into marriage with another person, then those insecurities will rise up to the surface and be an interference in your marriage. And you will want to try to supersede that person because that person may seem a bit stronger or seem too strong for you. And you want to be stronger than them because of your inadequacies. Doesn't matter if it's male or female. And this is the reason why in some marriages you have the men lording over their wives, telling them that you're not supposed to speak when you're in the congregation. All right? And then you have some women lording over their husbands because they're the stronger breadwinner in the home. They're bringing in more money than the husband. The husband, well, he decides to step back because after all, she's paying most of the bills in the house. And there's some husbands that they don't have a job, and their job now is to be like a mom to the children. The wife, she's working in corporate or some fancy job. She's bringing in the big dollars. He doesn't need to work. Someone needs to stay home and take care of the children. So I'm making more money than you, husband. Why not you stay home and take care of the children and I go out and work and bring in the money and tell you how to spend it? I'm sorry. I know it's not funny, but if you can't if you let this burden you, you'll be very heavy. And I refuse to be heavy over this because I know it's going to be restored. The delicate balance will be restored. So let's not get too caught up in the heaviness of it all. Yeah. But this is what is happening today. You have some men, they have no voice in the home. The woman, she has all of the voice in the home. And then you have the other extreme where the man, he has sole authority in the home and outside the home, and the woman is just there to supply his needs and to take care of his children and to cook his food. That's an imbalance. All right? And this is because of sin. I know some of our brethren, now I'm going to go and touch on our brethren, where in the camps, if you notice, you will not see a woman speaking because they believe that only men have a voice to minister and to teach. Women are not called to teach. That's what they will say. Some of them are going to get, in fact, you're not going to make it anyways. You're not going to make it to see what the true kingdom is going to look like. They will go and look, they will say, okay, let's look at our forefathers. All right, let's do that. Let's look at our forefathers. Yes, the men had the prominent roles because they were the warriors. They're the ones that went out and fought in the wars. And yes, they were the ones that were called to be the ministers in the tabernacle. Why? Why did Allah do this? Because of several reasons. One, The men were the warriors that went and fought against their enemies to protect their families. The women, they had to take care of the children while the men were fighting the wars and protecting them. Who else is going to look after the children? And yes, women were not allowed in the tabernacle because of the as women, there are certain times of the month when you're considered unclean. All right? And for that reason, women, they were not allowed in the tabernacle because of this particular reason. And plus the fact, even giving birth, they're considered unclean for a certain number of days. Then they have to go through the ritual cleansing in order to be considered clean again. And that's okay, because men knew who they were. Our forefathers knew who they were. They knew what they needed to do. And the women knew who they were and they knew what they had to do. They were satisfied with their roles. Women didn't need to prove themselves and men didn't need to prove themselves. They were strongly warriors. Look at the wars that they fought and won. And they came back victorious, bringing back the booty. So they were satisfied in their roles, and women were satisfied in their roles. And on top of all of that, Allah was dwelling in their midst. There was one time in the Bible when certain daughters came to Masha and said, Masha, there were no men in our household, only women. And if we decide to marry into another household, then what belonged to our family, our inheritance, will be gone. And Masha heard the voices of the women as they spoke this thing. Allah told him what they're saying is true, because all the males in the congregation of Yashraal, all the 12 tribes of Yashraal, were given a portion. And that portion was supposed to be passed on from generation to generation, not to be taken over by someone else. And then they have double portion. No. And Al-Hayyan said, the women, they speak truth. Listen to them and tell them this is what is going to happen. They were allowed to marry only into their own tribe and keep the inheritance for themselves. The inheritance stayed with them and their name, even though they were women. Allah can hear us even when we speak. It is only in our own natural minds that we decide, no, a woman does not have a voice to speak in the congregation. She is not allowed to minister. Based on what? Based on the past that you were not living in the past, and the past is so distant away from us. How can you know how things were back then? And when you look at the reasons why, and you compare to the reasons today, it's like far apart. The men back in those days, yes, they had to be the leaders because they were the warriors. The women were the nurturers. And today, what wars are you fighting? What wars are the men of Yashraal fighting today? What? That will cause them to be still warriors and be able to minister, whereas the women sit back and do what? Nothing. Even if Allah is calling forth the women. And this is the reason why I'm saying this. Allah He will call forth women to speak. He did it in the past. He did it in the past. And yes, we had a few examples, but nevertheless, it's showing us that he still viewed women as people that he can use to minister unto his people and to him. But the problem with our people, and it's not their fault, it's not our fault 100%. Okay. It is our fault in the sense that we brought ourselves into this mess through disobedience. Our forefathers were disobedient to Allah, which drove them into slavery. And since then, we've been trying to find ourselves. Because as slaves, we had no rights, not even to be a man or a woman. We were treated like property. We were treated like cattle. The women breeded or bred for the master so that he can have more hands on his plantation. Men sired the children. Yes, he sired the children. But he was never a father. We didn't function as a family on the plantation. No, we did not. So we're trying to find that balance in our own selves. Who am I? I'm supposed to be a woman. How am I supposed to be? Same thing with the man. So we're trying to find our own selves while still trying to figure out how to be a husband and a father or a mother and a wife. I should be wife and mother first, right? Husband and father next. And it's only because of Rawach HaQadash, as he takes us into his word, and as he brings us into his word, and he starts to restore us. First, as men and women, then if you happen to marry someone, then to be husbands and wives, and then fathers and mothers. But if we try to draw our knowledge from any other source, you're not going to achieve that delicate balance. You're part of a Hebrew Israelite camp. They're saying, no, 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 you have to be controlling your woman. You have to have control over her and what she speaks. I heard an elder from a camp say that one time. Blew my mind. I'm not saying that the woman was right. The woman was wrong. However, the way how he talked about her was as if she was a piece of property. Isn't that how the masters, the massa on the plantation treated us? No wonder some women rebel. Not giving them excuses either. I'm not giving any woman an excuse to rebel. But these are the sore points inside of us that cause us to react the way how we are not supposed to react. The inadequacies, the feeling of inferiority, of feeling inferior. All right? Feeling inferior because of the way how you're treated. All right? And it's a sore point for all of us. I came through it. But thankfully, the Most High, He cleaned me up. He cleaned me up. And this is what we have to deal with today to find that restoration, at least to know who you are. Right now in the world, and I'll touch on this a little bit, we have the alphabet group, those rainbow people. Oh, yeah. We have them pushing their agendas. And you have the inverted genders. They're pushing another agenda. Because now women from way back when they were talking about the feminist movement and whatnot, they want to appear strong, even stronger than a man. So today now you have the inverts, women, but were once men, if you understand what I'm saying. And they will give you that male energy, which is strong. Because that's how men are. Men are strong people. They're strong. They have that energy of strength. So when a normal woman looks upon one of these creatures that are inverted, you're going to try to attain to that strength. And in attaining to that strength, you're going to have to demote your husband, demote men. Now they're talking about men who behave like men, walk like men, dress like men, talk like men. They call it toxic. Because men need to be in touch with their feminine side. So you see where this is headed? Trying to raise up the status of women and lower the status of men. And when you have that, that is definitely against what Allah Hayam had instituted even after the fall of Adam and Hawa. And all it's doing is creating all manner of chaos and confusion in the home. And when a man cannot live like a man, then there's he is going to be unhappy, unfulfilled. All right? And he will search for someone that will help raise him up to be like a man. And that's why we have adultery going on all over the place. He is dissatisfied at home, so he searched for someone else. And it goes the same way with the women too. She's dissatisfied at home, so she looks for satisfaction elsewhere, which brings all manner of chaos, confusion, hurt amongst these people, this relationship, and if they're children in the same family, even more hurt. Hurt for them too. And then the children, they're raised up seeing this imbalance and they become just like their parents. Or worse. Or worse, unless Allah Hayam steps in and fix those individuals and even the children. All that is going to happen is a downward spiral until you hit rock bottom and you can't get back up. All right? This is all the enemy's doing. This is what Satan is doing. Yes, we see it in the world amongst the Gentiles. I'm not worried about them, but amongst our brethren. And I spoke about the Hebrew Israelite camps. where women, you don't see the presence of women anywhere. You only see the brothers speaking. I don't have a problem with that. But at least amongst your congregation, there got to be at least one woman that can say something. How about hello? Right? Praise Yahweh. And then you go to the other extreme now in the churches where some of our brethren are. Some of them even call themselves a church. And you have the women taking the authority over the men, or having authority over men. They're leaders over the men. And I'm not saying that is wrong, because if Allah Hayam has called forth this person, this female, to be a minister, so be it. But all you have to do is listen and hear where this person, what this person is saying, what they're ministering about, and then you'll know for a fact that, hey, he did not call her. First of all, she's calling on the JC. She's calling on God. She's calling on Christ. She's not even awakened, and yet she believes that she is called to minister to the flock. I'm telling you, it's a delicate balance that can only be achieved through Rawach HaQadash, when he first restores us as individuals, and then us in our marriages. Can't be done any other way. Any other way. What is most ideal is to see a husband and wife ministering together. What's wrong with that? She doesn't have to say a whole lot. He can take on the bulk of the lesson, but at least she is present to show that she is there to support her man. And not only support him, but working together for as ministers unto Allah Hayam. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? Men aren't fighting wars anymore. So Allah Hayam can use both male and female to minister to his people and unto him. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's all good. That is all good. All right? But there's a breakdown somewhere in all of us, male and female, men and women. There's a breakdown psychologically, emotionally, and even physically too. There's a breakdown. Meaning that there's some trauma, some sort of trauma in our lives that have not been addressed. And the only way to deal with this trauma is to usurp or to control, manipulate your husband or your wife, your spouse. Let me say that. To manipulate, control your spouse. He did not create a husband to control his wife. He did not create a wife to control her husband. But this is the problem that we're experiencing today. And it's a big problem, a serious problem. All right? Serious problem. And this is why we have been led away from the truth if we fall under any of those categories where you're controlling your spouse. Even the fact that you feel inferior, that's a problem. You need to go to the Most High to receive your healing. You're not going to get healing from a marriage. You think by becoming a wife or becoming a husband, you're going to feel whole. No. You do not receive your wholeness from a marriage. You receive it from Allah Hayam. It's called healing. All right, let's read on. Bara'ah chapter 2, verse 18. This is the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 18. And Yahweh Allah Hayam said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make a helpmeet for him." He's speaking of Adam when he first created him. In the beginning, Allah Hayam created woman for man to be his wife, the mother of his children, his supporter, and of course, his equal. There was a delicate balance between Adam and Hawa, where he did not have to tell her what to do or how to do anything. The one command that was given to Adam, because Hawa was not created yet, was to not eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This command was passed on from him to her, as she knew about the evil tree. But Adam did not enforce the command as he should have. He told her about it, but he didn't enforce it. He was created to be the head. That's why the command came to him and not to her. The command came to Adam, and Adam passed the command on to her and should have enforced it, but he did not. And she was to be his supporter, yet his equal, as they both were created in the image of Allah Hayam to be spirit like he is. He created male and female, created he both them, male and female, to be in his image, the image of Allah Hayam. And if they were both created in his image, then they both were equal, except one was male and the other was female. And the reason why he did that is because he had a role for them to perform. They were to become fruitful and multiply. And we know two men can't give birth to children, neither can two women. One must be male and the other one female in order for this to happen. So when he created them in the beginning, he did not create them as unequals. He created them to be equal. The only difference between them were their genders and their specific roles because of their genders. They both were ministers of Allah Hayam in the Garden of Odan, and he came down to speak to both of them together. Remember when he came down after they sinned? He came to both of them. He didn't come just to Adam. The delicate balance was disturbed when temptation came and rebellion arose, which led to sin. Sin is what is driving the gender wars in the world, even within our brethren. This was the intention of Satan when he tempted Hawa, even though Adam was right there with her. Hawa wandered after the tree, and Adam wandered after Hawa. Hence the reason why Satan's temptation worked as well as it did. For a moment they took their eyes off Allah Hayam and chose to look elsewhere because of the lure. And since their fall, which has become our curses today, we are struggling to find our footing as men and women to begin with, and to experience that delicate balance that was lost. As a result of Adam and Hawa's fall, certain curses were bestowed upon them, which are passed on to everyone born on this earth, except Hamashiach, of course, when he was born. So let us look at these curses and see how they affect us today. Let's look at Bara'ah chapter 3, verse 16. It's the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 16. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In sorrow you shall bring forth children, and your desire shall be to your husband, and he shall rule over you. And unto Adam he said, because you have hearkened unto the voice of your wife, and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it, cursed is the ground for your sake. In sorrow shall you eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face shall you eat bread, till you return unto the ground. For out of it were you taken. For dust you are, and unto dust shall you return. Let's look at curse number 1. Women have sorrows at conception. So we see here that he told Hawa that she will have sorrow at her conception. Many women today experience either great difficulties becoming pregnant, or they experience miscarriages, or they experience complications with pregnancies like morning sickness and such. These are our sorrows brought on by the curse number 1. That's what brings sorrows to a woman's heart. Trying to get pregnant, can't get pregnant. And finally, when you do get pregnant, miscarriage. Or the baby is born, they call it stillborn. Baby is born dead. Some women go through great difficulties while being pregnant. They're laid up in bed all throughout the pregnancy. Some people go through some issues like nausea and vomiting throughout their pregnancy. Some develop hypertension, diabetes, all different complications that cause great sorrow of heart because they're not sure if the baby is going to make it. That's curse number 1. Curse number 2. Women experience sorrow at childbirth. Because of this curse, number 2, women today experience terrible pains as they travail to bring forth children. Pain and sorrows were never part of Allah Hayam's plan for us to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Yet here we are today travailing to bring forth children. And thankfully, the pain disappears once that baby is held by the mother. That's the only reason why women go back and get number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 children. Because if they remember the pain while they're still having it, they will never want to have any more children. But thanks be to the Most High that He removed the memory of the pain and just gave great joy and pleasure to hold that newborn baby. To say, this is so worth it. I'm going to do this again. But that's curse number 2, pain. Curse number 3. Oh, before I move on to curse number 3, even travailing. Some women, they go through lengthy times of contractions. Because you get the contractions first before the babies come forth, before the baby comes forth. All right? Birth pangs. Travailing. For some women, it's a few hours. Some women, it is even longer than a few hours. It's half a day, the next day. All right? All kinds of pain. And that's a lot of pain that they're going through. until the baby is birthed. All right? Curse number 3. Women's desire, their longing will be for their husbands. Most women today who are married have this intense longing for their husbands. You may say that this is a good thing. At least she longs for her husband. But this kind of longing is a curse, as we need to long for Allah Hayam. The husband has become the wife's focus, which was not so in the beginning. This was the delicate balance that was lost, where now the man has risen over her, which leads us to the next curse. So before Adam and Hawa, their desire was for Allah Hayam. But in that small moment when they took their eyes off him and they transgressed, now her desire must be Adam. So the wife now, their desire must be their husbands. And the husbands now have risen over them, when at first it was not like that. Adam was the head, but he was still equal to Hawa. In fact, Hawa was still equal to him. That's the better way of putting it. But he was still the head. He still had the authority. But today we have the men, the husbands who are the ones in charge, the ones in authority, and they are over the woman. The woman now have dropped below men. And this is because of the curse. And the only way to restore the marriage where the woman and the man and his wife can enjoy that sweet balance is through Allah Hayam. And that's why we see an imbalance in the marriages, even amongst our brethren today. Especially amongst our brethren. All right? So curse number 4, husband ruling over wife. Because the delicate balance was lost, now women today are in constant gender wars in the world, and especially amongst our brethren. Husbands and wives are rarely balanced in their roles and duties to each other. And not only to each other, but how about their children? And how about especially to Allah Hayam? How can you be balanced with him if you're not balanced in your own selves with each other? Right? And this is due to this curse. Men lord over their wives and wives control their husbands. So that too is the imbalance, because when the men aren't lording over their wives, the wives are controlling the husbands. I've seen this. I've seen this even in my own family. I see it with my friends. And although this is not always the case in every marriage, there's always a hint of one or the other nevertheless. There's always a hint of a man still lording over his wife. He might not do it, as strongly as some men do. And same thing with the women still controlling their husbands, but not as strongly as some women will do it. Because the delicate balance can only be there if Al Hayam is in their midst. If they are truly worshiping Allah Hayam Yahweh and not some other pagan god. If you're worshiping pagan gods, you are not going to achieve the delicate balance between husbands and wives, men and women. You're not. It's impossible. We even see this extending to the parenting of their children. Because if the woman is acting like the husband and the husband is behaving like the wife, that is confusing to the children. Very confusing. This is especially true amongst our people, as from the days of slavery, Parenting was not paramount for the men, but this we can also trace all the way back to our forefathers living in our land. They were busy fighting wars and less busy being fathers. It's true. If you're out there fighting war, how can you be a father to your children at home? But yes, they had to fight the wars in order to keep their families safe. But this came at a severe cost. Single parenting was never intended by Allah Hayam. At some point of time, He had given ease to our forefathers from the wars that they fought. Yes, He did. They weren't fighting wars 24/7. Yet this ease also resulted in rebellion, because the ease and peace that He blessed them with brought aimlessness and lawlessness. They did not know what to do with themselves, like parent their children and take care of their homes. What happened to them? They fell into sin, transgressing His laws. Instead of being fathers, they're out there worshiping idols or watching how the other nations are worshiping their gods and bringing it into the household, or committing adultery, or doing something that they're not supposed to be doing because they're not busy fighting a war and they don't know how to be a father, obviously, or they don't want to be. We know Dawad, our king, the king over Yashwa'al, he was a wonderful warrior, a great king over Yashwa'al, yet he was a lousy father. He was not a good father at all to his children. His children, especially Absalom, ruled over him. And they committed all kinds of abomination, well, I wouldn't call it sin, transgressions. And what did he do? Did he punish them? No, he did not. He would cry though. When Absalom took over his kingship, he ran away. He didn't rise up against his son. His son rebelled against him. Why? Because he was so busy fighting wars, he had no time to be a father. And what, from my knowledge and from my understanding, children need both mothers and fathers to help them to grow up to be healthy, happy adults. So when his sons grew up, then you see the troubles beginning to multiply in the households of Dawad. He had a lot of wives, and those wives had children, even to the point where the Bathsheba, who was the mother of Shalawam, had to go to him in secret in order to proclaim Shalawam to be king, because there was another son rising up in the ranks and coming against Dawad. Dawad was sickly in bed, and she had to go to him and talk to him. These are the things that should not have happened. Yet the Most High loved Dawad. He loved him because his heart was after the Most High. And he made his mistakes and he repented. Not like some people that make the mistakes and they want to be wrong and strong. But Dawad was not like that. He humbled himself always before the Most High. All right? He was a great king. But when it came to fathering his children, he was not there. And this is the problem with Negro men. They father a lot of children, many different women, but they don't become fathers to their children. All right? And this is especially true amongst our people. Curse number 5. Men have to work hard by the sweat of their brows. Because occupations have changed since our forefathers were in the wilderness and in our land, working the land as in farming is not as popular as it was in their days. Today we have the white-collar workers and blue-collar workers. Nevertheless, especially for our people, the southern kingdom, this curse is definitely ours. We work hard, yet we remain where we are no matter what we do. And this goes especially for our menfolk. If working hard would get us ahead and on top, then we would not have any need for Allah Hayam. In order for any of our brethren, inclusive of women, to make it in this world, they have to sell their birthrights. And unfortunately, many of our brethren have done just that. So if you want to get ahead in this world, you got to sell your soul. Literally. Because you got to be able to do the handshakes. You see, it's by the handshake that you can get ahead. And that handshake means that you're involved in some sort of cult or occult like organization, or the cult like organization, and we know who they are. And in order to be a part of them, you got to give up your birthright, your inheritance. Okay. Curse number 6. Thorns and thistles. These are the griefs that are experienced when promotions bypass our menfolk in the workforce, wherever they are, and the many difficulties that come in their way to prevent them from moving ahead. So I'm looking at this from a modern point of view. But if you look at it from a literal point of view, yes, you got to work harder to farm the ground. Because you got the weeds and the thistles and everything growing up. There were no weeds and thistles and thorns in the Garden of Eden. But outside Garden of Eden, because of sin, all these things grow up to restrict and constrict your crops. But I'm also looking at it from a spiritual point of view as well. Thorns and thistles, problems, issues. And there's no people that have more problems than the Negro. no people like us. They have more problems than anybody else on this earth. All right? No matter how hard you work, you can't move ahead. So the many difficulties that come in their way to prevent them from moving ahead. That's what happened. Our menfolk have to work harder than all the other races. Although this curse is meant for men of other races as well. But it's especially for us. Especially for us. Because you look at some of the other races and you just shake your head like, how do they do it? They come with nothing. And then in a few years, they got a business and running successfully. All right? And they have each other, they have their friends and family that rally around them to help them too. But not our people. No. Not our people. And then they turn around and help their cousins and whoever is looking for help. They help them and help them to build their business too. I saw this when I was in the Caribbean. You had the people coming from India with their suitcases. In fact, no, they come with nothing, just the clothes on their backs. They go to a friend or a family member that have started a business, and they give them a suitcase full of material, fabrics, and tell them how to do it, when to do it, and where. And they will go from house to house walking with this suitcase. And in a matter of years, then they could afford a car. And they can bring more stuff, not only fabrics now, they can bring little household items. I know I grew up in that era. And there was one particular Indian guy that used to come. In fact, his father came, and when his father got too old, he brought in his son to work alongside of him. And when he got too old to carry on the business, he retired, and his son, young man, took over. And every Saturday, he was at our house showing us some beautiful fabrics that he had. And the wonderful thing about it, they used to give you credit, right? And you pay a little bit of money every week. And every week they will come with something else. So you would never stop buying, because there's always something that you want. And then he expanded and he had a car, right? And he would come with more things. All right. And then suddenly now he had a shop, a store in the city. And he would still come around. And I believe he introduced another, I don't know if it's another relative or one of his sons or what have you. But by that time, the children now, they grow and they decide, no, I don't want to farm. I don't want to do that kind of work anymore. I want to be either a blue collar worker or a white collar worker. This is not this is not for me. No, laboring like this is not for me. And that kind of business kind of wore out in the island. In fact, my island, I don't know about the other islands, but you don't see them walking around with suitcases anymore. But this is how it was when I was growing up, right? And they were very nice people too, and they will help one another. Help one another. If they had a friend or a family member that want to start a business, then they would do the same thing that was done for them. Give them a suitcase filled with materials and tell them to charge X, Y, and Z, and this, and that, and show them the ropes. But was this done amongst our people? No, never. We weren't taught to help one another. No, we were not. And that's why we are in the state that we're in today. All right. So this curse is meant for our men of other races. Although this curse is meant for men of other races as well, yet Yashraal, specifically the southern kingdom, is the main target. So our people, we are the main target of this curse with thorns and thistles, problems, no matter what. You got to work 3 jobs and you might as well just work one because the 3 jobs it doesn't amount to much. And you lose sleep, you lose family time, and you end up losing a lot more in the long run. Curse number 7, mortality. Because of this one mistake that Adam and Hawa made, we all are faced with mortality, with death, unless we are regathered by Allah Hayam, either in the chariots of fire or in the second Exodus. And this is the chariots are for the southern kingdom. The second Exodus is for the northern kingdom. Otherwise, death will find you. So that curse brought mortality. When Adam and Hawa sinned in the Garden of Eden, before they sinned, they had the ability to live forever, especially if they had eaten from the tree of life, then it would have sealed their fate. But when they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, like Allah Hayam said to them, you're going to die. The day that you eat of it, you're going to die. And they didn't understand it. They didn't understand what he meant by that. They ate of it and they were still walking around. They thought, hey, but that's not what it meant. It meant that Adam and Hawa, if they had not eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they would have lived forever. But now they will experience death. And then if you go a little deeper in that precept, you'll find that in the Apocrypha, it helps you to understand this, that Adam did not live for the equivalent of one day according to the heavens, the heavenly tablet, the testimonies of heaven. Because 1,000 days on the earth is as one day in the heavens. So technically and spiritually, Adam and Hawa did not make it in one day, according to the testimonies of the heavens. All right? Because he died when he was 970 years old, I believe. 970 years or 930 years, one of the two. But he was, although you might think that is quite old, but he did not complete 1,000 years on the earth. He died within that one day according to the calculations of the heavens. All right? So let's move on. Because these 7 curses have been magnified over the generations due to evil in this world, Allah Hayam made a way back for his people through his Son, where these curses will not have such a severe effect on us, as he, Hamashiach, took on our curses on the stake. This is where it all begins for us as believers. If we want these curses to be rolled away from us, it has to begin with Hamashiach. I can't believe that people will deny Hamashiach's existence and importance to us. But there are people out there teaching such. They believe it and they're teaching, and there are others that are actually listening to this heresy. You cannot make it into the kingdom without Hamashiach. You cannot go before the Father, Ha'aba, Yahweh Alahayam. You cannot go before him unless you're cloaked in the righteousness of his Son. So your denial is bringing condemnation upon you. And worse yet, if you're teaching the same to other people, then their blood is on your shoulder. You cannot deny Hamashiach. He is our tabernacle. He is our high priest forever. He is our eternal sacrifice. He is the way, the truth, and the life. He is everything that we need. Without him, how can we find the way? Without him, we cannot receive Rawach HaQadash. But if you don't believe in Hamashiach, you definitely will not believe in Rawach HaQadash. You think it's just the Heavenly Father and that's it. And there are many people out there that are believing this and teaching as well. Some are teaching this and many are believing this to their own destruction. This will even continue on where Allah Hayam will begin to reveal his word to us through his Ruach, drawing us back into his presence again. This is the footwork that we all need to do in order to make it into his kingdom. You can't make it into his kingdom on your own merit. We have nothing that he wants. And yet, he has given us all that we need in order to make it into his kingdom, starting with his Son. Without his Son, we're nothing. And he doesn't even look upon us. That's why people can carry on believing this lie. Because he's not going to step in and say, you're wrong, son. You're wrong, daughter. No, he's not. And as a matter of fact, he will put a bridle in your mouth and steer you away from him. Keep believing the lie because I'm going to destroy you. Life on earth may not be perfect, but Allah Hayam wants to begin the process of perfecting us for that beautiful day when he will regather us to complete our perfection in him. This imbalance between men and women will come to an immediate end, and we will enjoy the harmony between each other, as well as harmony with Allah Hayam. Once we are regathered, then that harmony, that delicate balance will be restored. But he wants us to start now, here and now, by allowing his Rawach to proceed with his work, by first believing in his Son and then allowing Rawach HaQadash to proceed with his work. We are a damaged people. We've been through so many slaveries and traumas and persecutions. And even though we may look healthy on the outside, spiritually we're damaged. And we need him to bring healing to us. Allah Hayam will bring about a new thing, which really is not new per se, but it was not established fully because of the gender roles that had to be performed due to sin. Men had to fight wars and be the warriors, while women had to be the nurturers, taking care of the home and the children predominantly. In the kingdom, will this still be so? Because we're not going to be fighting it. Our men will not need to fight any more wars. After the men are regathered in the men of the southern kingdom are regathered, what war are they going to fight? In fact, what wars are they fighting today? Except if they're in an army in America or some other country. But really and truly, what wars are our men fighting today? And when we are regathered, what wars are we going to be fighting in the future? None. Absolutely none. So, what then will be the role of the man? Will he still be a warrior? For starters, all the curses that were passed on to us from Adam and Hawa will be reversed. For example, while living in the kingdom, women will conceive with no problems whatsoever. There will be no barrenness, no miscarriages, and definitely no complications or difficulties while being pregnant. Throughout the gestation period, women will experience only bliss, looking forward to a painless childbirth. There'll be no more pain. That curse is rolled away. Women will reclaim their longing for Allah Hayam instead of for their husbands. This will be the added benefit of women being able to work side by side in ministry with their husbands for Allah Hayam. Because the delicate balance is restored where men know who they are, and women likewise, women will know who they are too. Husbands will not rule over their wives, and they will treat each other as equals before Allah Hayam. Men will not have to work by the sweat of their brows like they are today, and the earth will not bring forth thorns and thistles to be in their way. So there'll be no problems while they're working. And if they have their vineyards and their groves and their orchards and their fields and whatnot, there'll be no thorns and thistles there either. These are the curses that are going to be rolled back. Last but not least, we will all be immortal, never to see death. Why? Because we have eaten of the tree of life. All right? We got rid of that sin nature and then we eat of the tree of life. So now we have eternal life. We are immortal, never to see death. What a time to be alive. Imagine living in a time where everyone is treated equally fair and with great respect. No thought about the gender roles, as we all will be parents to our children and we all will be ministers to Allah Hayam. Yet at the same time, we will know we all need to stand in our specific roles, as this will become inherent. Now, in saying that, because women will still be the nurturers, all right, women will still be nurturers, yet Allah Hayam will allow them to minister unto Him. The men will still be the head over the household. They will still be the authority figure in the home, yet they are not going to lord and control their wives. And the women will feel quite satisfied in their roles as being the nurturers in the home. And every now and then, when they are given the chance to minister, they minister to the best of their abilities, together with their husbands. All right? And the men will find and reclaim their role as fathers and be excellent fathers, just like Allah Hayam is an excellent father. He will teach them how to be a father to their children. All right? This is the delicate balance that will be restored once we are regathered. All right. So let us consider a curious scripture that points us in this direction where women will regain their status. So remember, The cursed women were now Lord beneath the man because the man now will rule over the woman, all because of this sin. But he did not intend the men to control and to lord. Rule, yes. Be dominant, yes. But not in a rigorous manner, not in a harsh manner. So we looked at this scripture and I've kind of spoken about it a little bit, but now we're going to look at it in detail. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 22. That's Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 22. How long will you go about, O you backsliding daughter? For Yahweh have created a new thing in the earth. And that new thing, he is going to renew something in the earth. A woman shall compass a man. A woman shall surround a man. And I know I kind of hinted at this in the past in a couple of my studies, but I didn't really go right into it because it was not the right time. But this is a very curious verse that is right smack in the middle of Jeremiah chapter 31. So let's read and see where this verse is going to take us. When Allah Hayam created Hawa to be a helpmeet for Adam, he created her to be just that, someone to help right alongside her husband. Allah Hayam did not create Hawa to be less or lower than Adam, but to be his equal, although their roles would be different. She was to be the mother, the nurturer, while he would be the father, the one in authority, the head of the household. It did not mean that he was to lord over his wife and children, but he was responsible for their provision and for ensuring the one law was obeyed. That is, if they had had children while still in the garden before they sinned. Yet after they sinned and they left the garden as a result, Adam did make sure to pass on to his sons the correct way to worship Allah Hayam. Of course, this was lost to Cain, who was a rebel. Cain is Cain. So Adam, after they were led out of the Garden of Eden, he understood what he was supposed to do. Allah Hayam taught him. And he taught his children. And he taught his children to teach their children to pass on the law of worship, how to worship Allah Hayam. But Cain was a rebel from the day he was born. And he wanted nothing to do with worshiping Allah Hayam. So he went down the mountain. The word helpmeet, which is ozar, means someone who helps or support. Allah Hayam said that it was not good for man to be alone. So he created Hawa from the rib of Adam. Yet in Bara'ah Shayath chapter 1 verse 27, he created both the male and female spirits. Therefore, Allah Hayam had always intended to create two people, a husband and a wife, to be in a covenant relationship together. Adam never lorded over his wife because he remembered even after they left the garden who she was. Adam was not intimidated by Eve. Sorry, I call it Hawa. Eve is not the correct name for Adam's wife. It is Hawa. So Adam was not intimidated by Hawa. And he was not feeling inferior and he was not feeling insecure about himself. So there was no reason for him to lord over his wife. And Hawa never emasculated him because she knew who Adam was even after their fall. But this gradually changed over the many generations until we reach where we are today. So this emasculating of men have been put in the works to drive men down, to make them lower than where Allah Hayam wants them to be. All right. And yet we have, on the other hand, some men, they raise themselves up higher than where Allah Hayam wants them to be. Right? There's a place where he wanted man to be, and there was a place where he wanted women to be. But these places tend to move up and down depending on the trauma that's in a person's life. So you see the woman raise herself up and lord over her husband and control her husband, control her household. All right. And then you see the opposite happening with the men because we've lost our way. Adam and Hawa, before they sinned, were in the garden where they worshipped Allah Hayam together as one with him. He came down to speak to them both while they both ministered unto him. And this is how it will be when we are together with him for the 1,000 years and even afterwards. For the record, the saints that will ride with Hamashiach when he returns to the earth as Malak will also include all the women that will be regathered. So who will be regathered of the southern kingdom in the chariots? When they are regathered in the chariots, men and women, they're going to be the same ones that will ride with Hamashiach. It's not going to be just men, right? It's going to be men and women. All right. Okay. The new thing coming to the earth will be that of the relationship between the woman, who is the wife, with the man, the husband, and their purpose in service to Allah Hayam. In the distant past, women in our 12 tribes were the nurturers while the men were the warriors. Today we see that our brothers in the Hebrew camps try to emulate the same idea. But the problem is, we are all in captivity together. The men are not warriors, for there are no wars for them to fight. Yes, the women are maintaining their role as nurturers, somewhat, not all of them. And even a few are being used by Allah Hayam to be his ministers today. Now, this is not to put a man down by any means, for there is a delicate balance within the roles that only Allah Hayam can maintain. Do not think for 1 minute that Allah Hayam cannot use women in leadership positions. He gave us this perfect example in Dabawara, who is Deborah, who was the judge over the 12 tribes of Yashra'al. So remember her? Okay, she was one of the judges over the 12 tribes. Shawapatayam, which is the book of Judges, chapter 4, verse 4. And Dabawara, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, she judged Yashra'al at that time. And she dwelt under the palm tree of Dabawara between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim. And Habanai old Yashra'al came up to her for judgment. Dabawara was the judge over all of our tribes, yet she was married. And yet there was a king over the 12 tribes called Barak. And yet Allah Hayam made her leader over everyone, including her husband and the king. Now, she did not lord in her position, not over the king or over her husband. All right. She was there. She was literally, yes, the judge, but his key advisor. He came to her when he needed advice or he needed direction on how to lead the troops. And that sometimes he said to her, "Can you go with me?" And she will go with him. Because she was the judge over the 12 tribes of Yashra'al. And he took her advice. The king, Barak, took her advice. Whatever she said, he did. Now, this is not a case for feminism, but rather a case that women, due to the fall, were reduced to a position of service beneath men, unless Allah Hayam raised them up to be his ministers and leaders. Now, just because we were reduced in our position because of the fall, did not give the men the right to lord over us, to lord over the women. All right? It's just like when we were sold into slavery out of rebellion. Our forefathers were rebellious. We were sold into slavery, but it did not give the slave masters the right to beat us and to kill us. No. They were supposed to keep us as slaves, but they were not told, or they did not have the right to torment us, to persecute us. And it's the same thing here. Women were made a little lower than the men, and yet the men were not supposed to lord over the woman and try to control her. All right? Or control us. But it happened this way because, again, there was no balance. Let's see where I left off. We see this occurring with the status of man that was above the angels before the fall, but was reduced to a position beneath the angels after the fall. However, at the regathering, we will be reclaiming our position above the angels. Now think about this. Hamashiach, he was king. He was Malak in heaven. And when he came down to the earth, born to become a man, he was made a little lower than the angels. All right? Because he had a purpose to perform. He had to die like a man. And he didn't mind that he was made a little lower because he was secure in himself. He knew who he was or who he is. And after he performed his role, after he did what he came to do, which is to die, he was raised again. He was raised up by his father, by Ha'aba. And now he is seated in glory next to the Father. And he's achieved, he has, I think the scripture said, he has an excellent name, better than they now. Better than the angels. And if he was not intimidated by the fact that he was made a little lower than the angels, why are we behaving the way how we're behaving? Trauma. All right? Emotional baggage. Okay. The first book of Adam and Hawa, chapter 34, verse 5. At first, angels trembled at the presence of Adam and were afraid of him, but now Adam trembled before the angels and was afraid of them. So the angels, before the fall of Adam and Hawa, they trembled in their presence. Why? Because they were in the image of Allah Hayam. They were cloaked in his glory. They exuded his glory. And then after the fall, when they lost their glory, now they're trembling before the angels because now the angels are higher than them, higher than us. Many of our men today, and even some women, oppose women in leadership positions. These are some Hebrew camps. These are the Hebrew Israelite camps that will not permit women to minister. Sorry, let me read that again. There are some Hebrew Israelite camps that will not permit women to minister, to have a voice, to speak what Allah Hayam has given them to speak. This is lording over a woman, which insecure men practice to project themselves as strong leaders. You know how they like to walk around with these studded cuffs around their wrists and this bandana and these big belts and these huge necklaces and this fierce look on their face like, I'm bad, I'm king. That's an insecure man. I'm telling you. If you got to do all of that to project an image, that means that's not who you are. That's what you want to be, but that's not who you are. not who you are at all. There's also the opposite effect, where some women control their menfolk, emasculating them, making them weak. This is the terrible imbalance amongst our people today because of the sin nature. Insecurities, inferiorities, traumas, and all manner of damages have afflicted many of our people psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, which in turn have rendered them spiritually weak. Unresolved issues in our lives will lead us to be too damaged to be any good for Allah to use us. Yet many damaged people are trying to lead a flock of other damaged people, creating all manner of chaos, strife, and confusion. It is for this reason why there are so many conflicts amongst the brethren, whether in a camp or in a church. Lust and pride being the biggest catalyst for these conflicts. I say it all the time. I came out from the church and I've never seen a people that bicker and fight like the people in the church. And I see it too in the Hebrew Israelite camps. Big time. Everyone want to be top dog. All right. But that's a problem because of pride and lust and damage. You got people that are damaged on the inward parts and they're trying to be leaders. They're not called, but they're trying to be leaders because they figure this is the way to feel important. All right. Same thing, not just men, but women are doing this too. However, for the millennium, this will all change. Those who will be regathered will be healed and made whole before this event. Of course, he is not collecting any damaged people. You think he is regathering any damaged people? No, he's not. These will be the ones rightfully called the righteous remnant of Allah. Remnant, meaning a few, not many. Because those are the ones that will allow him to restore them. Men and women. At this time during the millennium, there will be no more wars for the men to fight, for the earth will be at peace for 1,000 years. For this reason, men and women in their roles as husbands and wives, fathers and mothers will be equalized, where women will also be in leadership positions with men, with their husbands. The men will take the lead, obviously, but the women will be right there, the wives will be right there with their men, with their husbands. The delicate balance between the gender roles in the home and in ministry will be achieved. The image that men and women were created in will be perfect once again. And so there will be no gender wars of any kind. There will be no feelings of inferiorities, no feeling of insecurities. There's no feeling like, oh, I got passed up. Right? Because I'm a woman, I got passed up. How dare you? No, there's not going to be any of that. None whatsoever, not even a thought. Because we will be already a healed people. And then once he regathers us, then it's going to be completed. And we'll be restored fully to be 100% men, 100% women, which will reflect in our roles as husbands and wives, fathers and mothers. Let's look at Psalm 8, verse 3. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet. So he made us when Adam and Hawa came out of the Garden of Eden. and cloaked them in flesh now. I explained about the soul and spirit in part 1. Now he's cloaking them in flesh, which made them a little lower than the angels. When they were in the Garden of Eden, they were higher than the angels. Let's look at Obadiah chapter 2, verse 8. This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 2, verse 8. You have put all things in subjection under his feet. For in that he put all in subjection under him, speaking of Hamashiach, he left nothing that is not put under him. But now we see not yet all things put under him. But we see Yahawasha'o, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of Allah Hayam, should taste death for every man. So he was made lower than the angels, just like we are. We're made lower than the angels. We became lower than the angels. So he became lower than the angels so that he should taste death for us, because he became our eternal sacrifice. Verse 10, for it became him for whom are all things, in bringing many sons unto glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through suffering. So he suffered so that we don't have to go through the bulk of our sufferings. And most importantly, we don't have to suffer the wrath of Allah Hayam. Right? So his death gave us the opportunity to be able to be brought into the glory of Allah Hayam. We can now find our way through redemption, because of the redemption of our sins, that now we have a way back to the Father. All right. The writer of Obadiah was reflecting on what the psalmist was saying, giving us an understanding about why Hamashiach came in the flesh. This also helps us to understand that when he came in the flesh, it made him lower than the angels, signifying to us that this body of flesh of ours is indeed of a lower stature as compared to the angels. We looked at 1 Adam and Hawa chapter 34 verse 5, that the angels trembled before Adam and Hawa, and this changed after the fall, where Adam and Hawa trembled before the angels. These are clues to allow us to see where we were before, where we had fallen down to, and where we will arise to in the end, together as men and women, husbands and wives, and as fathers and mothers. So just like Hamashiach was made a little lower, and then after his death and resurrection, he is now seated at the right hand of the Father. When we are restored fully, we're not going to be resurrected, first of all, but we will be restored when we are regathered. We will be restored to our rightful place to be above the angels. This indeed is a big subject matter that warrants time to speak about. We have been a trodden down, traumatized people for generations, rendering all of us damaged in one way or another. So you may not have faced racism, but it came down because it's like a spirit, an evil, the curse, that even though you have not faced it, the trauma from it was passed down from generation to generation. It's there, hidden inside of us. All right? Because racism, along with all the evils in this world, have some sort of connection to the evil spirits. And you can't just wish them away or think because you're born in this era that has no effect on you. No, that's not true. These are curses that have been passed on from generation to generation. We may not see it as raw as our forefathers have seen it, but the evidence of it is there. Look at the way how we treat one another. Look at the way how the men speak of Negro women. Look at how the Negro women speak about the Negro men. They want to go and marry other nations because they don't like the Negro men. And the Negro men, they don't like the Negro women. They go and they marry women from other nations and treat them better than they treat their own kind. Why is this happening? Because they despise themselves. They want to make sure that when they procreate, they have children, that their children would come out looking different. And that comes from trauma. Generations of curses that have been passed on that have molded you in the mind and in the heart to despise yourself and to despise your own people. And when you do that, you're despising Al Hayyan because we were created in his image. So if we're Negroes, guess who he is? He's a Negro too. Although he's a spirit, he's a Negro. Hamashiach, when he came on the earth, he was a Negro. All right. Let's see where I left off. This indeed, I read that already. Thankfully, Hamashiach came to show us how to be healed in his name. And he sent his comforter to continue his healing work with his people. And now, once and for all, he will restore all of us like we have never experienced before. And it will be glorious. Men will still be the head and authority in the home, and women will still be the nurturers, yet the delicate spiritual balance will once again cause men and women to work side by side in ministry to Allah Hayam. Women will truly be fulfilling their role as helpmeet as defined by him. We will love our husbands and support them in every which way we can. And the men will love their wives and support them every which way they can. There'll be no fighting for top position. Men will already know, I am the leader of the house. He wouldn't have to say it. He wouldn't even have to think it. And the women will treat the men with great respect, treat their husbands with great respect. Remember back in, I believe it's in Rawach HaQadash, when the angels came to Abraham, and actually, no, that's not the right story. But in Rawach HaQadash, we have Sarah. She used to bow to Abraham and call him Lord. Small L, by the way. Not Baal, not master. She was showing him Adas Adawan, meaning sir. Yes, master. But not master as in lording over. But she showed respect for Abraham. And she treated him as if he was king. And when I said king, I know some of our sisters and call the brothers kings, but you know what? We need to stop doing that because we're not there yet. Right? And stop calling the women queen. We're not there yet either. We're not there yet. We don't need pride right now. Pride is a problem with our people right now. And when you call a man a king, that's setting him up for a big fall. Stop that. All right? Have respect for them. But stop that. But Sarah, she had great respect for her husband. And he had great respect for Sarah. He loved his wife. And this is what Allah Hayam wants for us when we are regathered. And this is how we will be when we're regathered. Now that we have an understanding of how our bodies will function when we're regathered and hereafter, and how our gender roles will be equalized throughout the millennial reign of Hamashiach, now we are ready to move on to another topic, the government of Hamashiach. What will it all look like when we are reunited with our resurrected? What will it all look like when we are reunited with our resurrected brethren? So we know Hamashiach will be Malakana, he will be our Malak, our king, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. So this is not a detailed look at the government of Hamashiach, because we all will be leaders and worshippers and ministers unto Allah Hayam, because we still will have the Gentiles, and we will be the ones to lead the Gentiles, right? They can't come into the city, but we go to them, receive their sacrifices and what have you, their offerings, and we bring it back to the tabernacle, and we offer them up on behalf of the Gentiles. That is it. But to look at it in great detail, we can look and see how it was in the days of Masha. Masha had his elders. Each tribe had their princes, their rulers. Okay? Those are the kinds of things that obviously will be the same in the new millennium and afterwards. So this is just looking at it in a glance, really. So let's look at Yeshaiah chapter 9, verse 6, and this is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. So he is the one that is going to restore the government on the earth. Because we know the governments on the earth right now, they're nothing compared to what he is bringing. And his name shall be called Pala'ah, Wonderful, Yawa'ot, Counselor, Al-Gabawar, the mighty Allah Hayam, and this is singular because Al there is short for, or is singular for Allah Hayam. Allah Hayam is plural. Abai, Od, meaning everlasting, Father everlasting, Abba. I know some people will say Hamashiach is not the Father. You know what? We need to get over ourselves. He shares everything. The Father has given him everything. Everything he's placed under his Son. He's not taking over the role of the Father, of Ha'aba, of Yahweh, but he is still called the Everlasting Father. He shares the same titles with his Father. All right? Sar Shalawam, Prince of Peace. So we call him Malak, and yet he is still called Sar Shalawam, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end upon the throne of Dawad, and upon his throne to order it, and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of Yahweh all Sabaoth will perform this. So it's because of Yahweh who is going to cause his Son to perform all these duties, all these titles, and to bring judgment with justice upon the earth, to bring his government upon the earth. And you know, we are so limited in our minds that we think that just the way how we think it, it has to be. All right? He is the Son, but but Yahweh Allah Hayam has given everything under the sun, has placed all things under the sun. And he shares the same titles. Many of the titles that the Father has, Ha'aba has, the Son has as well. What's wrong with that? He says, I do only what the Father says to do, and I speak only what he tells me to speak. I do nothing of my own self. He never claimed anything of his own self. And yet it is the zeal of Yahweh, Ol Sabaoth, of host, that will perform this. Because he's the child that is born, he's the son that is given. So he's speaking of the son of Allah Hayam. All right. The Wad will return to be our chief prince over the 12 tribes. I know there's some scriptures he's called king and also prince, but I guess that is trying to give us the idea of the position that he will have. Just like he was king over the 12 tribes when he was alive, when he returned, he's going to be like a king because he's going to be like the chief ruler, the chief prince. This is to show us that he will not be just a prince, but a chief of the princes, like a king who is the highest of all the rulers in the land. There will be a prince over each tribe, making them 12 princes in total over the 12 tribes. So each tribe will have a prince, a leader, all right, over the tribe. And you know, these tribes are not small. So beneath the 12 princes, there are going to be other leaders as well. Just like in the days of Masha, Masha had his 70 elders, and he had other leaders as well, leaders over tens, over 50, over 100, right? So the Father is going to establish his own government during the millennium and after. All right? Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Yaakob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. For it shall come to pass in that day, said Yahweh ol Sabaoth, that I will break his yoke from off your neck, and will burst your bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him, but they shall serve Yahweh their Elohim, and Dawad their Malak, whom I will raise up unto them. So that's why I included the scripture, not to look at the day of Yaakob's trouble, but to look at the scripture, verse 9, Dawad their Malak, Dawak their king, whom I will raise up unto them. All right. So let's look at Yahazakaal, which is Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 23. And I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant Dawad. He shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. And I, Yahweh, will be their Elohim, and my servant Dawad a prince among them. I, Yahweh, have spoken it. So now he's calling him at first a king, then he's calling him his shepherd. Then he says, my servant, Dawad, and now he's calling him a prince. All right. But the idea that he wants us to have is that Dawad is coming back to be a leader over the 12 tribes. Yahazakaal chapter 37 verse 24. This is Ezekiel chapter 37 verse 24. And Dawad, my servant, shall be Malak over them. So you see, he's calling him a king here again. So earlier, Yahazakaal calls him, he's called a prince by the prophet, and now he's called a king here. And they all shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Yaakov my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children's children forever. And my servant Dawad shall be their prince forever. So Dawad is coming back. So this will begin at the 1,000-year reign, when the brethren that's in paradise or before the throne, they will be resurrected to life. As couples become families and their children too will become families, these groups of families with the same name will be clans, with chiefs over each family clan, while an elder will be over each family within the clan. The elders and the chiefs will work closely together, rallying around the families that will make up the clans. So the clans now together will make up the tribe. So within the tribe you have clans, and within the clans you have families, but they're all part of that one tribe. The resurrected brethren will all be elders and ministers, spending most of their time in the tabernacle. So they're coming back and they're going to spend most of their time in the tabernacle ministering to Yahweh and Hamashiach. Because remember, we also have other roles and duties as husbands and wives fathers and mothers, right? We're going to have children. We're going to have to, we're going to need to take care of them, take care of the home, but we're going to still at the same time minister onto Allah Hayam as a family unit. All right. So let's look at Ba Madabar, chapter 3, verse 17. That's the book of Numbers, chapter 3, verse 17. And these were the sons of Lawai by their names: Garasharan, who is Gershon, and Kohath, and Mamarai, which is Merari. And these are the names of the sons of Garashawan, which is Gershon, by their families: Labanai, which is Libni, and Shemai. And then we drop down to verse 21. Of Gershon was the family of the Libnites and the family of the Shemites. These are the families of the Gershonites. So you're seeing how the clan will be the Gershonites. And then the families under Gershonites will be the Libnites, the Shemites, all make up the Gershonites, which is the clan. All right. So you have the family, which is the Libnite and the Shemites, and then you have the clan, which are the Gershonites. And we know the Gershonites Gershon is the son of Lawai, one of the sons of Lawai. You have Merari, Gershon, and Kohath. Those are the three sons of Lawai. And those three sons became the progenitors of the Gershonites, the Kohathites, and the Merarites, right? And those three clans were responsible for the tabernacle and the furniture. All right. One took care of taking down and setting up the tabernacle. One took care of dealing with the Ark of the Covenant and some of the furniture inside the tabernacle, while the other clan took care of all the other things. Right? It's all spelled out in the book of Numbers. So that's an example of clans, of families within clans. All right? And clans within a tribe. So the tribe will be Lawai, and the clan will be Gershon, the Gershonites, Merarites, and Kohathites. And then you have the families now beneath them, which will be, and we saw for an example of Gershon, the families of the Libnites and Shemites. All right. And then we drop down to verse 24. And the chief of the house of the father of the Gershonites shall be Eliasaph, the son of Lael. So now you have the chief, the leader, the elder of the house of the father of the Gershonites. So this now is the chief of the clan, or the elder of the clan, whichever name is going to be used. All right. So this is the elder of the clan, not to say the same for each family. So each family will have their elders, and each clan will have their elder as well. And then you have the prince over the tribe. I hope that doesn't sound too confusing. Right? Okay. Let's move on. Debarayam chapter 32, verse 28. So this is Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 28. So concerning them, Masha commanded Eleazar the priest and Yahwasha'o, which is Joshua the son of Nun, and the chief fathers of the tribes of Habanai Ol Yash'al. So these chief fathers are the princes, the 12 princes of the tribes of the children of Yash'al. So he called them here chief fathers, and other places they're called princes. All right. So let's look at Shamawath chapter 4, verse 29. And Masha and Ahawaram went and gathered together all the elders of Habanai Ol Yash'al. So now we have elders. Okay. We have elders now, along with the princes of the tribes of Yashraal. Let's look at Shamawath, chapter 12. I forgot to put the verse. Then Masha called for all the elders of Yashraal and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to your families and kill the Passover. So before we left Goshen, there were elders over the families, elders over the families. And that continued on even after we went into the wilderness. But Masha then established a more sophisticated leadership because he was taking on the bulk of the leadership role. And it was his father-in-law, Jethro, that told him, no, 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 you need to share your leadership with other men of the same likeness as you are. Right? Whatever anointing you have will be passed on to them. And that's exactly what the Heavenly Father did. He selected 70 men to be rulers with him. They took all the small matters to them, and what could not be settled came to Masha. So we know that they're going to be the role of elders as well in our midst during the 1,000-year reign. Shamawath, chapter 19, verse 5. This is the book of Exodus again, chapter 19, verse 5. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you shall speak unto Habani ol Yashraal. And Masha came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words which Yahweh commanded him. So this is how Masha was able to pass the word on to everyone in the camp, because there were many people. All right, many, many people. So he spoke to the elders, and the elders would go and speak to their people and pass on the message from Allah Hayam. This may seem like a very simplistic arrangement of leadership roles as compared to those we see in the churches today, and even in the Hebrew camps, Hebrew Israelite camps. You know, everyone have this fancy title. Oh yes, I am an officer, I'm an elder, I'm this, I'm that, I'm an apostle. All these fancy titles. I am bishop this, I am pastor evangelist, right? All these fancy titles, all right? But they lack the equipping that comes with the title. Anyway, let's move on. What may appear simple before our eyes is really extraordinary if we truly consider who will be established in these roles. We tend to forget who Allah Hayam is. He is Bawa Ra'ah, meaning creator, after all. Of course, there will be variations between the leadership roles, which we will not know until we get there. Another thing to consider too, it will not be in English. So I'm giving you the English version. Okay? I'm giving you the English version. So he's not going to call us by an English title. But this is just to give us an idea of what it will look like somewhat in the future. For now, to understand, so let me read that again. Of course, there will be variations between the leadership roles, which we will not know until we get there. So until we get to that point of time in the future, we're not going to know exactly 100% what these roles will be. All right? We have an idea based on what was done in the past, and we know how Allah Hayam, when he established something, he doesn't just toss it away in the future. All right? unless it's a prophecy that was fulfilled, then maybe it's done. But there are some things that we will continue on doing because he established it all the way back in the wilderness. All right? Just like the tabernacle, he established that in the wilderness and in our land, and then on Mount Shalawam. And when new Yerushalayim comes down, then he and Hamashiach together will be the temple thereof. So he never removes the tabernacle or the temple, but he becomes the temple, him and Hamashiach. All right? For now, to understand how Hamashiach will establish all of us to be his kings and priests, his leaders on the earth, even over the angels and the Gentiles, quote, the Gentiles as well, that will join with us, is sufficient information for us at this time. No one will feel inadequate or passed over, but everyone will be filled with joy and everlasting peace. How can we feel inadequate? There's no such thing. That will never exist ever again in our lives. That feeling of feeling inferior would never exist ever again. All those things will be gone, passed, thrown into the lake of fire. All right? Yasha'oyah chapter 35 verse 10. This is Isaiah chapter 35 verse 10. And the ransomed of Yahweh shall return and come to Shalawam with songs and everlasting joy upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Let's look at Yasha'oyah chapter 61 verse 7 again. For your shame shall you have double, and for confusion you shall rejoice in their portion. Therefore in their land they shall possess double. Everlasting joy shall be unto them. So once we are regathered, we will not experience any sorrows of any kind whatsoever. It will only be pure joy. Pure joy and gladness forevermore. Now, one last thing that we need to consider is the role of the Gentiles that will come into our fold. So these are the ones after the 1,000-year reign. What will it look like for them when they come into our midst? And this is something that we're going to continue on when we start to look at Revelation chapter 21. The Gentiles who have survived, or who will survive the Gog and Magog war because they will be righteous before Allah Hayam, will come into covenant with him and have an inheritance with us. Now Allah Hayam, before the war of Gog and Magog for the 1,000-year reign, gave the Gentiles land and cattle, all the things that they needed, he gave to them during the 1,000-year reign. And still, after the 1,000-year reign, they rebelled against him, joined up with Gadriel, and decided to become part of his army called Gog and Magog. Now all of them, a remnant, remained behind because they're what we call the true worshippers of Al Hayam, and they were found righteous before him, and these are the ones I'm speaking about. However, they will be our servants, but not in the way in which we were once slaves and servants, serving the Gentiles always with rigor. So even though they're coming in with us and taking a portion of our inheritance, they're still going to be our servants. Not slaves, but our servants. They will be treated kindly and lovingly, and they in return will serve us with love, because these ones will realize two things: how blessed they are to make it through the judgments and to return and to receive eternal life with Allah Hayam, and the honor it will be to serve Yashra'al as their leaders. So they will come to the final conclusion that it is a great honor to serve Alahayam and to serve his people. For as they serve us, they will be serving Alahayam as we are his children. But how will the Gentiles come into the fold? Which tribes will they be a part of? So that's the next thing that we need to consider, because they will no longer be called Gentiles. We know that the Gentiles that served our forefathers, whether in the wilderness or in our land, were accepted into the tribes that they served. So, as it was in the past, so it will be in the after the millennium. It should be after the millennium. Those Gentiles that will serve us during the millennium, in whichever tribes, will remain in those tribes to be a part of them. So, they're the righteous ones that served us during the millennium. Now, after the millennium, they will become a part of that tribe. Whatever family they worked for, they become a part of that family. All right? Just like what Abraham had. Abraham had a household and he had his children. He also had his servants. And when Al-Hayam established his covenant with him, Abraham circumcised not only himself and his son, but he also circumcised all his servants. They now became a part of his household. All right? Same thing that's going to happen in the future. This will be their inheritance to receive the name of our tribes. But this will only occur after the millennium, after the last war of Gog and Magog, and after the white throne judgment. Because who else is coming in as well will be those that will receive eternal life after the white throne judgment. Those that will be resurrected to life. And this will be the second resurrection. The first resurrection was for our brethren. The second resurrection to life will be for the righteous Gentiles. And they too will be given their position in whichever tribe Al-Hayam will give to them. The Gentiles will come into the fullness of their inheritance once the heavens and the earth are renewed. This will also include those Gentiles who had died but will receive the gift of eternal life. Let's look at Leviticus chapter 25, verse 45. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall you buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, and they shall be your possession. And you shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. They shall be your bondmen forever. So, whatever families or people, strangers that came in and they have children, they will continue to serve like their parents have served the family of Yashraal. All right? And they will remain as bondmen, meaning servants forever. But over your brethren, Habanai ol Yashraal, you shall not rule one over the other with rigor. But this is just in Leviticus, Al-Hayam was establishing certain laws here about slaves and servants, bondmen. All right. Let's look at Leviticus chapter 19, verse 33. And if a stranger sojourn with you in your land, you shall not vex him. But the stranger that dwells with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Matzorayim. I am Yahweh Alahayakam, your Alahayam. And we have to remember this, that we were once strangers in Matzorayim. And Alahayam does not want us, even today, to vex the Gentiles. No, he does not. We're living as strangers in their land, and we're not to vex them. And he said he wants us to love them as we love ourselves. We don't know which Gentiles are coming in with us, and we cannot choose, we cannot select who will come and who will not. All right? Let's look at Yahazakaal chapter 47, verse 21. That's Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 21. So shall you divide this land unto you according to the tribes of Yashraal. And it shall come to pass that you shall divide it by lot for an inheritance unto you and to the strangers that sojourn among you. You shall beget children who shall beget children among you as born in the country among Habanai Ol Yashraal. They shall have inheritance with you among the tribes of Yashraal. And it shall come to pass that in what tribe the stranger sojourns, there shall you give him his inheritance, said Yahweh Allah. And this is how it will be for those that will join us, those that used to work for, in fact, those that will serve us and will have children, and their children will come and continue to serve us. All right? They're the ones that will become part of our tribe, part of our family, part of our tribe. And they will continue that service too. It has always been about Allah Hayam choosing a people to call his own, to be in covenant with them so that he could dwell in their midst, and they becoming his people. Throughout our history as the chosen people of Allah Hayam, he had established this covenant with them, our forefathers. And time again, our forefathers breached his covenant, causing calamities to befall us. Now today we are here. We know the truth, and he has set us free from deceptions and spiritual bondage. And soon we will be finally free from our physical captivities, when Allah Hayam will regather us unto him. Finally, we will be free from the shackles and the yokes placed upon us, even while we were in the wombs of our mothers. Now we can enjoy living in a manner that Allah Hayam had created us to live, to enjoy his presence forevermore, and be in an everlasting covenant with him. What a time that will be. So we're going to look at Yahazakaal chapter 37, verse 26. That's Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 26. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their Allah Hayam, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I, Yahweh, do sanctify Yashraal, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. Now, to conclude, because this is the ending of this study, to conclude this prelude to chapter 21, Revelation chapter 21, we're looking at the complete restoration of us as people, which will reflect on our roles as men and women, husbands and wives, fathers and mothers, and ministers unto Allah Hayam. And not only a restoration on that level, but spiritually, emotionally, and psychologically as well. Because a lot of the ways how we think today is based on the imbalance that we have been living in for generations. And we think that we've got it, but we go a step further away from the balance on one spectrum to another, from one spectrum to another, never really achieving that sweet balance as men and women, first of all. Because if you cannot achieve that sweet balance to know who you are and be comfortable as a man, be comfortable and confident as a woman. Comfortable and confident as a man, and confident and comfortable as a woman. Then the next stage, which will be when you become married, will not be an easy job. It will not be an easy experience. And that's why there's so many people that are divorcing. They're seeking divorce from each other because they realize, I don't want to be with you anymore. And then you have the other extreme where you have the imbalance in the home. The men lording over the woman, or the wives controlling the husband, emasculating them. This was not the plan of Allah Hayam. This came as a result of sin. And what Allah Hayam wants to do is to restore that. But in order to restore that, it needs to start with us on a personal level. All right? And once it begins with us on a personal level, now we are ready to go the next step, which is to understand that if you're a male and a woman is being used in ministry, that this is not to intimidate you or to make you feel inferior, right? And vice versa. But all of this can only be corrected 100% when we regather. That's why I've said this, that the Most High is not collecting or regathering the southern kingdom as a group. He's regathering us as individuals. The most he will regather will be 2 people, and that will be a husband and a wife. All right? Could be a mother and a daughter, or a mother and a son, or a father and a what? 2 people at the most. But generally, he's collecting us as individuals all around the world, from the 4 corners of the earth. And he's collecting us in chariots. But what he wants us to do today is to make ourselves available to him so that he can heal us on the inward parts. Because he's not regathering any rebels. He's not regathering anyone who is stubborn and self-righteous and full of pride and thinking you've got it all figured out, that this is how it's supposed to be, and I refuse to back down. Well, you're not going to be regathered. We are looking at one another to try to figure things out. That's the wrong place to look. We need to look to the word of Allah Hayam, and we need to call on Rawach HaQadash to help us to look, to help us to understand what we're reading, to bring us revelation. But when you're looking at one Hebrew camp here and another Hebrew camp there, and they're doing it this way, this got to be the right way because these people have tens of thousands of people following them, so how can they be wrong? Well, you know what? Allah Hayam he's not looking for a multitude. He never looks for a multitude. He always looks for the remnant. The remnant that will follow him, because it would never be the majority that will want to follow him. Never has it ever happened like that before. All right? Never. So this is the conclusion, and hopefully people that are viewing this, if you're watching this and you've reached this far, congratulations. I know some people are going to have a bee in their bonnet about this, but that's okay. That's all right. I'm not here to minister a word that will tickle your ears. Heaven forbid. Right? Heaven forbid. All right? No, I'm not here for that. If you're looking for someone to tickle your ears, this is the wrong place to be. All right? Wrong place to be. Now with that, we're going to say the blessing for Yashwa'al, which is taken from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 24 to 26. That's Debarayam chapter 6, verse 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh wa Yashamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa yachanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh panayo alayak wa yashamlak shalawam. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now I'm going to read the command that he has told us to recite when we lie down, when we get up, when we go out, and when we come back in. Taken from Debarayam chapter 6, verse 4 and 5, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. Shama'o Yashwa'al Yahweh Allah Hayana Yahweh Achad wa Ahabath Ath Yahweh Allah Hayak Bakal Babak wa Bakal Napashat wa Bakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashwa'al, Yahweh our Allahayam is one Yahweh, and you shall love Yahweh your Allahayam with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And with that, I will say, Shalawam, Shalawam. All praises to the Most High. Abba Yah.